People, welcome to your Daily Sleepy, just a comic book thoughts video, hopefully a shorter one. I'm trying to, behind my head is that print from Comic Book Aesthete. I can't, there it is. And I've put up some of the other prints that I've gotten, and my new poster of Spider-Man, which is so huge it makes my other huge posters look tiny. I did not know that a poster could even be that big. Well, I did, but I didn't know I could order a poster that big, so I just ordered a big size thinking it was the same as those other big ones. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a few comics that I maybe should have been talking about more. Good comics that I've kind of not talked about a lot, I think. One is Spy Seal, which I'm enjoying a huge amount. For a large part because of the art, which is very, for a lack of a better frame of reference, Tintin-esque. But this is a world of anthropomorphic animals in kind of the swinging 60s spy era, and it's a really good match, this style with this story, and it gives it a light feel. And I don't know, it was even more fun in the second issue than the first. So if you have a chance to hop on to Spy Seal, I think you could hop on with this issue if you wanted to. Probably the next issue too, but also if you can scoop up the first two issues, I'd say do it. It's also going to be a great read and trade. I know that it's been struggling to sell or get pre-orders. Hopefully it'll be something that will do gangbusters in book form, both here in North America and elsewhere. It seems like it would be a good fit for places that have the graphic album tradition. So I hope I'm really enjoying it. I hope for a long run for it. It resides in a weird place, I think, because it looks like a kid's comic, because of the Tintin-ness, but it really is not. At least, especially the first issue, would be a little too slow moving and have some kind of, slightly risque references, but nothing that would be horrible to read with a kid, but would probably make a kid less interested in the comic book. So it kind of has that modern retro feel that an adult would like, that kind of reminds them of their childhood and other things that they're nostalgic for, but also is a good story and a fun comic book in and of itself. Great storytelling, great color. Does the artist, what's his name? Suddenly, Rich Tommaso, does he do his own coloring? I think so. I don't see a color credit right away. So it feels like this is one adventure of the Spy Seal, and Rich, if he makes money off of this, can come back and do more. So I really hope he does, because it's just such a satisfying package for a comic book fan, I think. It hits a real sweet spot that's hard to describe. Tommaso, it gets a little wordy at times too, which also, kind of reminds me of Tintin, but also maybe is a little bit of a barrier for kids. But, So I hope people will take a look at that, and I have high wishes for it in the future. And then another one, I know it gets talked about more, but is Exo Man of War, and I happen to have these. So this is from the every 3 issues is a different mini story arc, although it's really all one story. It's just the progress of Arik, is that his name? Arik, on this planet as he goes from being a soldier to a general to an emperor. So we've just got the first issue of the Emperor. Actually, the best art, and I don't have it in front of me, was the soldier period, but the general art was very good too, and it has, I think they all have coloring by the same person. Where's the credits? I thought it was, here we go. Colorist Diego Rodriguez. Is it Diego Rodriguez here? No, I guess here Clayton Crane, the artist, does his own coloring. And that's a little bit of the downfall. I still love it, but the art is so dark in its attempt to look painterly that it takes quite a bit of effort sometimes to suss out what's going on. It looks a bit like a video game to me, I guess. But still, there's a lot of cool stuff in the art. And the story is very cool, and it's getting complicated. Matt Kindt, I'm sort of associating him more and more with these stories with kind of a real cool, distant voice. Even in like Grass Kings, there's a distance to it, just letting things happen. Big, horrible things are happening. People are dying. Other things, well, particularly in this, less in Grass Kings. But still, Grass Kings has a murder, and other intense emotional stuff. But Kindt keeps his distance from it, which makes it kind of mesmerizing, especially in this tale that's, of planetary-wide politics and war and such. It has that sci-fi Conan appeal to it still, but it's gaining a little more complexity. It's like a little more complex version of Planet Hulk in a way. And I think I hear people say there's one more arc after this Emperor thing. I thought the Emperor arc was going to be the final one, which would mean it ends on issue 9. But I guess there's going to be one more 3-issue arc. But presuming this has been selling well for them, I assume they'll come back and do something similar. I really like X-O Man-O-War on other planets more than on Earth. But I assume they'll feel they have to bring him back to Earth for some event and some superhero team-up and all of that. But I like him as a sci-fi character who's not... He has superpowers because of this armor, but he's not a superhero in any of your normal ways. Which was part of what made Planet Hulk fun, too. It was so far away from the superhero Earthbound world. And here is Sacred Creatures. I wish I had number 1 to show you, because I don't want to give away too much. And I want to warn you that number 1 starts off really slowly, and it's difficult because it jumps between time. And it's artists writing this, people who are mostly known for their art. It's Klaus Janson and Paolo Raimondi are the writers of it, and Paolo Raimondi is the artist. I can't remember Klaus Janson writing anything before. So they, especially in the first issue, they sow some of their awkwardness, not with prose or anything, but with plot arrangement. They start at a point that is too slow of a build-up and yet confusing at the same time. But if you stick with it, it gets more and more compelling, and it's a really interesting kind of supernatural story. It reminds me a little bit of, what's it called? Of the Lucifer series that was by Mike Carey way back in the early 2000s. Was that the late 90s? I think it was the early 2000s. That was one of my favorite series. It's not exactly the same, and who knows what directions it'll take. But it involves various mythological creatures that perhaps relate to Christianity, or the Apocrypha of Christianity more likely. And it's really cool. And I just don't want to give away too many twists. There is a regular human at the center of it. And then there's all these other characters. There's unfortunately, it wasn't till this issue that we are shown a cast of characters, and that really helped a lot. The first issue was a bit confusing, but each issue is, I want to say 40 pages long. It's $1 more than a regular comic. It's well worth it. The art and color by Raimondi are really nice. He's almost too slick. It reminds me a little bit of, who's the guy who draws Kill or Be Killed? I want to say Breitweiser, but that's the colorist. You know who I mean. The regular partner of Brubaker, Sean Phillips. It reminds me a bit of Sean Phillips, but it's a little stiffer, a little slicker, a little more computer generated, maybe more photo referencey. But still, here it gets too computer generated, where they have a background that's literally looks like a street corner in New York City. But for the most part, still the art is very satisfying. The color is really nice. The storytelling is really good beyond the sort of awkwardness of that first issue. So if you like these kind of larger supernatural tales, a la, you know, along the lines a little bit of Sandman, but more closely related to a sequel to Sandman, which was Lucifer, I highly recommend it. And it probably will read fantastically well in trade, but it also reads really well in these single issues. I haven't read issue 4 yet. I'm really looking forward to it. It takes a bit of a chunk of time because not only is it a thick book, but a lot happens. A lot happens on every page. It's interesting to see artists, you know, they're not, I just opened this up and there's some double page spreads, but in general, they're being very generous. And I think an upcoming arc is going to be drawn by Klaus Janson. I'm very curious about that. He has a looser style. I like that style a lot. It might be a bit of a shock changing, but we'll see. So I highly recommend Sacred Creatures. And then maybe some just little extras, also Rands. I've still, because I haven't been talking about them much, I've still been really enjoying Aquaman. Dan Abnett, when he took on Stefan Sejic as the artist, took a very appropriate for the artist turn in the type of comic book he was writing. So now it's more focused on the fantasy kingdom of Atlantis, and both the writer and the artist do a really good job. The coloring is a little bit dark. Sejic does his own coloring, I think, or has he finally let someone else do the coloring? Yeah, he does the coloring too. It's amazing that he's doing this as a monthly book, and so far, no breaks, inks, colors, everything. There's more of that bad credit lettering that I don't like in DC Comics right now. But Aquaman remains really strong. And then I want to give a recommendation, a tentative recommendation for Dark Ark. I really liked issue 1. Colin Bunn seems to be hot again on his indie books, I feel, especially horror-related indie books. And this is a really cool twist on horror and the Bible, or about Bible story of the Bible story of Noah's Ark. My one hesitation with this issue is the art, which was okay. It tells the story pretty well, but it feels like for telling the story about ancient times, this kind of light animation style art isn't really the perfect art for it. This artist, Juan Doe, is decent at what he does, but I'm not sure if he's the perfect match, but still he tells the story well enough. So I will update you as I read more Dark Ark issues. I'm really looking forward to it, though. So it's just a really cool idea. So I also wanted to say I'm going away for the weekend to the coast. I may or may not get a chance to do the daily videos there, so I may give myself the weekend off. And also I wanted to mention in my last video about the Supergirl thing and marriage, well, I'm distracted by the upset going on in the background. Maybe I'll talk about the extra thoughts I had on that Supergirl issue, or that Supergirl story, in another video, because I think I need to get going. Talk to y'all later.